Welcome to the show, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Shout out to ISO Lando for the intro music. Catch his new album, Look Mom, Your Son's a Rapper. We'll get his music and his links on Apple Music and Spotify down in the bio. Thanks for tuning in to Two Guys, One Octagon. We got a special show for you today. I am your co-host, Jesse Moreno, joined by my other beautiful half in Denver, Colorado. How you doing, JL?
Fantastic. Thanks for asking. A little bummed that we don't have the UFC on this weekend, but it gives us a moment to reflect upon the year so far. Certainly lots of interesting stories, lots of developments. We've seen some changes in the UFC so far here in 2020, so I'm excited to talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get set up for 251 here in a week from this weekend.
Absolutely. Off week for the UFC, not an off week for us. So we're going to keep content coming at you. We're coming at you with a mid-year award show for 2020. We've had some big fights. We've had some big KOs, some big fighter movement. We got everything coming to you from the biggest stories of the year to KO of the year, submission of the year, fight of the year. We're going to conclude with the fighter of the year. All kinds of awards here for you. We've ramped up the content for you this week as well. So let us know what you think in the chat below. Like the video, subscribe. We're going to be on every single platform that you can think of. So hopping right into it. We got the first category coming up. It is the 2020 Mid-Year Gym of the Year. And we got some nominees coming in. We got American Top Team. Obviously, some great performances by Amanda Nunes. Some great performances just this past weekend by Dustin Poirier. Elevation Fight Team. Coming in with Justin Gaethje's performance. We got Curtis Blades coming out that gym. Drew Dober with a big year. And then obviously we got City Kickboxing. We got Volkanovski coming up at 251 next weekend. But Stylebender had some great performances. Dan Hooker had a big performance as well. So a lot of big, great nominees here. JL, what are your thoughts on who do you think should take it away?
I think City Kickboxing was more your 2019 Gym of the Year. I don't really see them in contention here. Stylebender, do I love Stylebender? Absolutely. Did I feel like that fight against Yoel Romero really did any justice towards qualifying either him or City Kickboxing for any awards? Not really. Then he comes out today and he's gone with the pay me route. So wondering if we're even going to see my boy Izzy fight again here in 2020. I think for me, it comes down to the hometown gym. You could even look at a guy like Drew Dober coming out of Elevation Fight Team, who has, had a really nice performance a couple weeks ago. I think that they've obviously shown what they've got. And to me, they kind of feel like that breakout gym this year. And at least so far here in 2020, that's kind of where my mind, takes me.
I kind of go with the same spot too. I think City Kickboxing, they had good performances with Stylebender, showed that he's disciplined, but it was a little more controversial and wasn't the fight that everybody wanted against Yoel Romero. American Top Team, obviously Amanda Nunes continues her dominance, and Dustin Poirier looked great. You got two front runners there, but Elevation Fight Team from top to bottom. When we look at Justin Gaethje out of there, one of the biggest fighters this year and one of the biggest fights, showed up amazingly. Then you got Curtis Blades. Then you keep rolling down the list. So you look at Drew Dober knocking out Nasrat Haqparast in January, then beating Alex Hernandez, knocking him out. He's coming to his own. So overall, well-rounded gym.
Neil Magny.
Neil Magny as well. Yeah, Neil Magny was the best we've ever seen this year. So I think you kind of know where we're headed on this one. Elevation Fight Team takes it for your 2020 Mid-Year Gym of the Year. We'll see where we're at come December.
Well, I know we're gonna get. I do feel like we're gonna get at least one more fight out of Gaethje. I feel like the way that Dober looked in his last fight, he's already fought twice here in 2020. Magny's already fought twice here in 2020. I won't be surprised if we get one, even maybe two more fights out of those two guys as well. And then obviously I think Blades will fight again, and I do think someone like Alistair Overeem, who also just won by TKO here in 2020, I could see him also fighting at least one more time this year. So I think we're going to continue to see this trend for those guys.
Yeah, Alistair just tweeted about making a run, his last run for this year. So we'll see where this goes. I think they're a heavy front runner for 2020 Gym of the Year. So coming up next, we got the 2020 Mid-Year Card of the Year. Obviously, ever since we had some good fights before coronavirus, and then now with coronavirus, fights have ramped up here in Jacksonville and also at the Apex. So we got some good fights here for your lineup. Obviously, we're all looking at pay-per-views. You had UFC 250, which had some amazing knockouts. You got it highlighted by Sean O'Malley, Cody Garbrandt. They came out firing at 250 in the Apex. Then you have the return of Conor McGregor at UFC 246. A lot of really good fights on that card as well, but probably the most watched card we're going to see this year is UFC 246. And then obviously you got UFC 249, which was the first card back coming off of a long layoff of coronavirus. You had a lot of fighters itching to fight, and you had a lot of fans begging to see this fight happen and this card happen. Joe, where do you stand on your card of the year? What's your lean?
Here's how, I mean, to me, 46 it's just not in the same contention as 250 and 249. I felt like 250 just top to bottom, a lot of really good fighters, a lot of really interesting matchups. But for me, it comes down to 249. And I'll put it this way, Jesse. Donald Cerrone headlined 246. I mean, he was really the number one fighter. He's the reason everybody bought the pay-per-view. He's the guy that they tuned in for 246, and this guy, he was the main event in the prelim card for 249. So I think that tells you everything you need to know. I mean, hell, Bryce Mitchell was on the early prelim for 249, and then obviously we know Ngannou, Cejudo, and Gaethje rounding out that card. It's going to be, for me, I feel like it's going to be a while before we see a card that's that deep top to bottom.
Yeah, I'm leaning with you. I think 250 had great exclamation marks when you look at the Cody Garbrandt and the Sean O'Malley fights. The Neil Magny fight was contested well too. 246 had its significance in that it's probably the one that most of the casual or not so casual, just tune in every once in a while, fans going to watch because of Conor McGregor name value. But when you look from top to bottom, fight after fight after fight, and then exclamation marked with the Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson fight, which if there was fans in that building, the roof would be flying off that place. I think you got to go with UFC 249, and that's what we landed with. I mean, look at that card. You forget that that Jeremy Stevens Calvin Kattar fight was a bloodbath, ended with a Calvin Kattar elbow. You got also everything on there from Hardy de Castro. That was a little bit of a disappointment, but you got all your action that you could hope for when Ngannou Rosenstruck. So overall, great card.
Yep, absolutely. That's no brainer. And I, again, just kind of like the team of the year so far. I'll be very surprised if we see a pay-per-view event that's going to top 249 in 2020. It was just a perfect storm and everything lining up because of these fights that were delayed and pushed back, and it ended up working out really nicely for us as fans. So
yep. So shifting to the next one, what is the biggest story of 2020? This was an interesting topic for a little bit because fighter pay has been a big issue. You got corner work is a story. Seems like every other weekend at this point when we look at Anthony Smith, you look at Robert Drysdale, and then you got coronavirus. To me, although interesting to talk about all these stories, I think there's a runaway here. JL, I think you're on the same page as me. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, these cornermen, they just need these cornermen. I don't know if I can. I can't find a reason to justify throwing your guy back in the ring when he is obviously just beaten down. No, man. I mean, obviously it's coronavirus. Let's just give a shout out to the UFC and Dana White for being our saving grace during this time. I think that the reason why there's even a conversation about what's the story of the year so far is because in reality, and I know we're seeing an impact in coronavirus on fighter pay, but in the grand scheme of things, I don't think that the UFC could have handled it any better than they did. I mean, they were the first sport to come back. Maybe Korean baseball beat them by a couple by a couple of days. I can't remember off the top of my head, but nonetheless, the first sport that people care about coming back, and they've handled it so incredibly well. I mean, maybe there's been some more positive tests that have come out since that first card in Jacksonville, but to have one positive test come out on that card and then to handle that smoothly going forward, this could have been a media bloodbath. I mean, it could have been a situation where people, especially non-UFC fans, just rip apart the UFC and rip apart Dana White. And it could have reflected, it really could have backfired, but the way that they handled it kept it from doing so. And I think that's even more of the story than the coronavirus itself. You got to give props to the UFC here.
Yeah, I completely agree. I couldn't be more proud of a sport backed by the biggest promotion than MMA and the UFC by getting our sport back faster than any other sport. Korean baseball is an asterisk on that. But yeah, I think coronavirus, it's going to paint the picture for this year. And when we look back at 2020, we're going to think of this year as the coronavirus year. So yeah, UFC, I agree with you. Applaud to them. This is the biggest story.
Plus, it led to Fight Island. I mean,
yep.
What's a better merchandising angle for the UFC than Fight Island? I don't know about you, but I need to buy that shirt, and I need to get it, on for one of our maybe even get it delivered before we do our podcast for 251. So, but man, I just don't think from a promotional standpoint and keeping the sport, making money, I don't think you could really wag a finger at Dana White right now. So.
No, I don't think so. So what are we going to call this minus 10,000, that this is the story of the year come December?
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's not even on the board.
They took away betting for this one.
There's no way. Live betting ended in like April.
All right. Shifting.
Hold on one second. All
right, you're good.
I'm going to close these blinds real quick.
You're good.
It's just, there you go. That's better.
All right, guys.
All right, go.
All right, let me go back. 3, 2, 1. All right, guys. Shifting into the next category, we got your 2020 Mid-Year Coach of the Year. Again, a lot of good candidates for this one. You got Mike Brown, who I feel like is a perennial contender at this point, leading Amanda Nunes, leading Dustin Poirier, leading that American top team, Jim, who is riddled with talent. Then you got Henry Hoof, man. Henry Hoof, Gilbert Burns, one of his pupils, obviously on his big run this year. He's got 2 of his top students fighting next weekend at UFC 251 as the main event. Really couldn't be a bigger honor as a coach for that to happen. Then you got Trevor Whitman, who's totally turned Justin Gaethje's career around, and really a fight with Tony Ferguson. I think without Trevor Whitman, Justin Gaethje would have got ran through without him, and it was his coaching, and Justin Gaethje will tell you that it was his coaching that got him to this level, where now he's the biggest threat that Khabib has ever faced going into the a matchup back in September. So, JL, what's your lean on this?
There is going to be a trend, at least from my perspective, to the rest of this show. And I think you've got to go with Whitman here. I haven't seen a fighter change that much from one fight to the next as I have with Justin Gaethje. We talked about it when we were looking to do our picks that week. We talked about maybe the fans having some impact on him being able to kind of slow down and control that chaos. But I think when you look you listen to the Joe Rogan podcast with Whitman and Gaethje, to me it was very obvious how much of an influence Whitman is having on Justin Gaethje. Just by listening to that interview, not saying anything bad about Justin, but every great athlete needs a great coach. We saw that the evolution of Michael Jordan's career with Phil Jackson. Same thing with Kobe Bryant and Phil Jackson. So there's a trend here, and I think that Justin Gaethje made the right choice, and having Whitman in his corner is probably the best thing he could have done for the future of his MMA career.
I'm actually going to have to disagree with you on this one, JL. I went Henry Hoof. I thought Trevor Whitman, obviously great coaching. He's turned Justin Gaethje around, but I think that's half of like a 2019-2020 thing, because the new Justin Gaethje started, in my opinion, in 2019, where he got a little more strategical about how he approached his fights. I think Henry Hoof, man,
Strategery.
Gilbert Burns has exploded, man, knocking out Damian Maia. Usman couldn't do that. Tyron Woodley couldn't do that. No one's done that to Damian Maia and made it look as easy as he did. He made it look easy at the same time while overcoming adversity in that fight. When Damian Maia gets your back, you are done. But Gilbert Burns got out of it, knocked him out with a beautiful check left hook. Then he goes and fights Tyron Woodley, the number one contender, steamrolls him. And I think people are overlooking his performance, as great as it is, because they're going to discredit Tyron Woodley. No, Gilbert Burns went out there, dropped Tyron before he could even get his game going, and that fight was his from the start. No disrespect to Mike Brown on here. I think it's a two-horse race. Mike Brown that is that guy that's always going to be on this list, but there's two people that's standing out. For all you guys out there, when me and JL didn't agree on a pick, we went and consulted the third party. I actually don't even know who this next one coming up is. Totally spaced it out. But it was Henry Hoof. Henry Hoof with Gilbert Burns' training and a couple other pupils that he has underneath him. He's going to be your coach of the year, Henry Hoof.
So, all right, dumb MMA fan question. Which one of Burns or Usman, who left Henry Hoof and went somewhere else?
Kamaru Usman actually is looking at leaving Henry Hoof to go to Trevor Whitman.
Okay, so then, wait, so did he do that for this upcoming fight or no?
He hasn't officially left him, no. Henry Hoof has actually opted out of training with Gilbert and Kamaru. So
Gotcha.
We don't know if he is officially leaving Henry Hoof or if he's just cross-training with Trevor Whitman for this fight. So
I guess we will find out who the better coach is, Jesse.
That's why it's the mid-year awards. All right. Looking at the next category, we have the 2020 Mid-Year Rising Star Award. Couple contestants coming in for this one. We got Gilbert Burns, who we just talked about in the previous one. Then you got the Sugar Show, Sean O'Malley. And finally, you have Wiley Zhang. JL, what are your thoughts?
This is a tough one because if you're thinking about like a rising star, you're thinking about somebody that is slowly or quickly, I should say, getting their name into the mainstream. I don't feel like any of these three are quite to the point where your mainstream, non every fight weekend watching fans are going to know these names. I think your best hope at that, Sugar Sean, because of his craziness, right? I mean, look at the guy. He's got fucking tie-dye rainbow hair. How could, that not draw your attention if you're just an average fan? However, I will say that that could really change. And I think obviously Gilbert Burns, to me, I feel like he deserves it because of this title shot that he's getting. In some ways, I think some people that don't pay attention would think it's out of nowhere. It's certainly a result of circumstance, with Masvidal not wanting to take that fight. But nonetheless, he's got the opportunity, and I think that's why, in my opinion, it's got to go with Burns.
Yeah, I actually lean Sean O'Malley with this one. And the reason is, I know people are going to say Sean O'Malley was kind of already a star, but not really. I mean, going on the same beat you were on, JL, if you ask the casual person on the street if they knew any of these fighters, I bet you they probably say no. All the hardcores love Sean O'Malley, but Sean O'Malley really fell off the scene after he failed his drug test a couple of years back, and now he's rejuvenated himself with his last two fights, one on 248 and then this one on 250. He's one of the bigger stars out there right now, and I think he's starting to come back. Gilbert Burns, I feel like he's a couple steps down. Yes, he's made big strides, but I think Sean O'Malley, when we're looking at the next star, and that's the category rising star, Sean O'Malley's going to be that star. So again, another one that me and JL didn't necessarily agree on. I don't remember who won this one either, but
And
it was
third party says Wiley Zhang.
but it was
Just
the
kidding.
Sugar Show. Again, the Sugar Show coming off that amazing knockout of Eddie Wineland. And I think we're going to see him probably once or maybe even twice more this year. But Gilbert Burns, I think Gilbert Burns can easily pass him, though, in December, just even if with a win this weekend. I think if Gilbert Burns wins the welterweight strap, I don't think there's any denying that Gilbert Burns is your rising star.
I went off of merit alone, and one guy's fighting for a title, and the other guy is still multiple fights away from doing so. Just saying.
Let's say the UFC gets ambitious and matches Sean O'Malley up with Cody Garbrandt, and then Sean O'Malley wins.
Oh, of course Sean O'Malley's going to win in that situation. There's no way Cody Garbrandt wins.
You don't think so, man? Sean
O'Malley's
only beat Eddie Wineland, and that's his only.
Not with that chin, bro.
I guess
I have no faith in that chin, and I expect Sean O'Malley to land a punch. So
the Amir Khan of MMA. All right. Shifting into the next category, we got the most improved fighter of the year. I gotta think
Conor McGregor.
I know Conor McGregor didn't have to sprawl in the Cowboy Cerrone fight, so
He'll never sprawl, dude. He's an old dog. Can't teach him new tricks.
We got Gilbert Burns coming back. I feel like Gilbert Burns is going to be in a couple categories here. Then also we got Cody Garbrandt. Obviously, we saw a new type of Cody Garbrandt against Rafael Assunção with Mark Henry in his corner. And then we also have Dominic Reyes, man. Dominic Reyes, everybody was looking through him in that John Jones fight, and he took it to John Jones, and a lot of people think he won. So, JL, I mean, I see you shaking your head. What's your lean?
I don't even know what Dominic Reyes is doing on here, to be honest with you.
Dominic Reyes never knows what he's doing. I don't think he knows what he's going to say until after the words are out of his mouth.
I just can't shake the feeling that John Jones was literally being Scar from The Lion King and toying with his food in that fight. So I don't even want to talk about him. Most improved, Cody Garbrandt. I mean, what are you improving from? A 3-fight losing streak? To me, it's Jesse just gave it away. I already knew where this was going. To me, it's a no-brainer. I feel like you could have come up with better contenders here, but I don't know who else we could have gone with. But it's got to be Gilbert Burns, right? I mean, for the exact same reasons. I think we can kind of move through this one quick because it's the exact same reasons why I felt like he was kind of the rising star. We've seen him develop his game. He's a complete fighter at this point, and a guy who I think has a legitimate shot next weekend at defeating Kamaru Usman, who's, of course, not an easy guy to fight. So,
yeah, I'm with you. I think Gilbert Burns is the runaway. I think Dominic Reyes wasn't even in the conversation here, although he was a nominee. All right, shifting to the next category, the biggest disappointment of 2020 mid-year so far. So, I think we got a couple good candidates here. One of them being Jorge Masvidal. If anybody came out of 2019 with the biggest head of steam and the most hype, it was Jorge Masvidal. We saw Street Jesus knock out 2 people at the beginning of the year in spectacular fashion and then win the BMF belt at the end of the year. I don't think there's many better years than that in MMA history. Now it looks like he's not going to fight in 2020 because of this fighter pay holdout. And then you also got Conor McGregor. He promised us a season at the beginning of the year. He was going to knock out Donald Cerrone, take a vacation day, and then get back in on a workout and run us through a 2016 type of run like he promised us. Now he's retired. So are we even going to see him fight this year? Also, you got the Khabib versus Tony matchup canceled for the 5th time. One of the most anticipated matchups in lightweight history. We don't get to see it now. Is it ever going to happen? JL, what's the biggest story of what's the biggest disappointment of 2020?
Jesse, I'm going to disappoint you with my answer here because I know where this is going, and I know what this is going to ultimately lead to because I remember what our third party chose. But the biggest disappointment for me is Conor McGregor. Not seeing he is the number one name in the sport, The only reason that 246 was even considered to be card of the year is because of Conor McGregor. The only reason that bar was sold out that night that we went to watch the fight was because of Conor McGregor. So is not having him in the sport the biggest disappointment? To me, absolutely. This guy, he's nearing the end of his prime. You could argue that he's already gone and out of his prime at this point. And we're losing valuable time to see one of the most entertaining, if not one of the best MMA fighters to ever exist. We're losing opportunities to see him. I think that's a massive loss, and a far bigger loss than Masvidal, and a far bigger loss than missing out on Tony Khabib, because the only reason Khabib and Tony isn't a bigger loss to me is because of the fight that we ended up getting out of it. We got a new star. We got a new knockout artist. We got a new version of Justin Gaethje. And to me, that made up for at least half of that disappointment of not seeing Khabib and Tony go at it. I make a strong case there, you gotta admit.
I think you make a strong case. I think you're looking at it from the UFC perspective, though. I think if you ask the UFC what the biggest disappointment is, I think you say 1, it's Conor McGregor, 2, it's Jorge Masvidal, 3, it's Tony Ferguson, Khabib, because you're looking at it from a draw point. But I represent the hardcores, JL, and I'm going to roll with the hardcores here, man. If you go through MMA Reddit, you go through MMA Twitter, the biggest disappointment of the year, hands down, is the 5th cancellation of Tony versus Khabib, man. That is the best fight in lightweight history, and we're never going to get to see it probably. We're definitely not seeing it in 2020. So what is... I don't think there's another case, man. We didn't know who was going to win that fight. Tony style versus Khabib style. It looked like a bad matchup for Khabib. So for me, 5 times now I've been excited. 5 times it's been canceled. I can't get any more depressed. Tony Ferguson, Khabib is my choice. Again, we consulted our third party for who's going to win this. It was Tony Khabib.
Now, disclaimer, the guy that we consulted, his name is Tony. So I feel like there might be a little bit of bias there. I will say this, Jesse, you said you can't think of yourself being more disappointed. Let me ask you this. If Conor McGregor never fights in the UFC again, will that top the disappointment of not seeing Tony and Khabib? You're a huge Conor McGregor fan.
I would probably agree with you, man. I would say if Conor McGregor never fights again, I would agree with you that's a.
And if we never see him in his prime again, I mean, there's a likelihood that the next fight we see him in is Khabib, and he's gonna get fucked up again, and we might not see Conor McGregor in the UFC. If I'm him, go get a payday and go fight Manny Pacquiao. Go make some money boxing with very little pressure on yourself. You're not ruining your MMA legacy. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see him one more time in the UFC and that's it. So
I'm with you.
It's sad. It's a sad thought because everybody tunes in for Conor, whether you love him or hate him. Everybody tunes in.
Well, now that you've got me sad, I'm going to take a quick breath and remind all of our listeners to like the video, subscribe, tell us what you think of the chats.
Shameless plugs.
What's your biggest disappointment? What's your biggest disappointment? What's your KO of the year? Tell us what you think in the chat below. All right. Next category. It is your 2020 Fight of the Year 6 months in. A lot of great fights this year. I don't think there's been a 6-month span of better fights that I can remember in UFC history. We're just coming off the high of Dustin Poirier versus Dan Hooker, which is one of the craziest fights I have ever seen in my life.
Which went the exact way I said it was going to go. Just saying. Literally spelled it out perfectly. So
and then you got Justin Gaethje, Tony Ferguson, which was a ridiculous fight. Tony drops him in the second. Justin fires back. He's a conservative. It's a strategic slugfest on Gaethje's side, and it's Tony Ferguson trying to break the will of Justin Gaethje. Another amazing fight. Then I think you got, hands down, the best women's fight in MMA history between Weili Zhang and Joanna Jędrzejczyk. Give me some props for getting those names right.
Weili Zhang, I'm not going to give you props for, but I'm still not convinced that you said Joanna's name right. But I'm gonna let you slide.
But again, JL, we watched that one in a bar. I've never seen a bar like that go that crazy for a women's MMA fight in my life. Went to decision. We didn't know who was going to win.
Yeah.
You got to tell me what are your thoughts on the fight of the year?
Well, the cool thing about the Joanna and Yang fight is that it really punctuated the night on a night that the main event truly disappointed, right? We walked out of that bar watching, Izzy and Yoel fight, just pretty upset about that, but actually talking more about the Joanna and Weili Zhang fight than we did about the Izzy fight. So I feel like that, it's not often that the co-main event is able to overshadow a main event, especially one that had that much hype going into it. So I feel like mad props to those two ladies for, absolutely bringing the heat. Never going to get the picture of Joanna's alien face out of my head. I literally am looking at this right now and can't picture her looking normal. I can only think of the alien bulge on the side of her face. And then the other two on here, I think also obviously great fights. Like I said, Poirier Hooker went the exact same way I thought I was going to. Gaethje coming onto the map. The only reason I would kind of rank Gaethje and Ferguson a little lower is because I feel like maybe, like, as much as Gaethje really showed up, I feel like Ferguson just wasn't the Ferguson we were expecting, right? I feel like that could have been more of a bloodbath. So I put that third. I'm going Hangman and Poirier second, and Weili Zhang and Joanna number one, just from a sheer entertainment standpoint.
I'm with you too on the Gaethje Ferguson take. I think that was a more one-sided fight than both of the other two. I think Gaethje kind of had a handle on it, even though Ferguson kept coming forward and had his moments. I think that was more one-sided than these other two. Dustin Poirier, Hooker, I was sitting on the couch watching that, couldn't really believe what I was watching, but I think you got to roll with the best fight in women's MMA history. I think what it had that the Poirier-Hangman fight didn't have is that they ended that fight on an exclamation mark. There was Superman punches and spinning back fists to close that fight out, while Hangman Hooker and Dustin Poirier, they both kind of slowed down at the end, not to take anything away from an amazing fight, but Joanna and Weili, I think they closed their fight out a little bit better, which is going to let me lean with them. Again, we consulted a third party for this one to get the winner. And Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk takes the dub for that one for us. And special shout out to the alien heads. I got 2 pictures in there for you, JL, on those. All right, guys, moving to the next category of submission of the year. More submissions. Got decent amount of submissions this year. It seems to be the year of the chokes. We got Aljamain Sterling running through Corey Sandhagen, which we thought was going to be an even fight. Ended up choking out Corey Sandhagen inside 90 seconds, which nobody saw coming. Then we got Charles Oliveira snatching up a quick guillotine on Kevin Lee, who tried to shoot in and change the course of the fight, but was obviously running into a trap there. Then we got Brian Boom Kelleher with his big statement on what might be a big 2020 for Kelleher, finishing a hot prospect as an underdog in Ode Osborne. JL, what are your thoughts on your submission of the year so far this year?
I think you got to give props to Kelleher. I think you talked about how big of a favorite Ode Osborne was in that fight. And for Brian Kelleher to come in there and get a submission, I think a lot of people caught a lot of people off guard. Jesse, did you win money on that? I feel like
I did cash out on the underdog Kelleher, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I tailed you on that one. And Charles Oliveira had a great submission as well. But to me, I think you got to give it to Aljo. Number one contender fight going in. I think a lot of people expected that fight to be pretty close. And for Aljo to take that and get it into a situation where his skill set was going to shine, I think to me was just deserving of number one submission so far this year.
Yeah, man, I'm kind of with you. I think Aljo had the most significance on his submission. I think Charles was slick. Kelleher's was unexpected. But Aljamain Sterling running through Corey Sandhagen. Also, man, he was going out there for a cause, not to get political, but he went out there for a cause that week and really put down a really big prospect to Corey Sandhagen, put him to the mat, choked him out, made it look easy, and now he's got a surefire case for the winner of Jan Aldo next week. So Aljamain Sterling all the way. I'm going to side with you, JL. think it's Aljamain Sterling. So moving on to my favorite category, knockout of the year. Got a lot of good candidates for this one. I think it's probably the better year for the knockouts versus the submission. You got Cody No Love Garbrandt knocking out Rafael Assunção at the buzzer. Then you got Francis Ngannou showing that he is the most powerful heavyweight in UFC history as he runs through one of the top two most decorated strikers he's ever faced in the UFC, knocking out Jairzinho Rozenstruik and putting a dead silence across the empty Jacksonville Arena. Then I think Conor McGregor knocking out Donald Cerrone, probably the most watched knockout this year from casual fans and just sports fans alike. I think that one's on here, in my opinion, for significance. Knocking out Donald Cerrone in his return to 2020 before coronavirus. We thought we were seeing a Conor McGregor season, and what a way to kick it off. JL, what are your thoughts for knockout of the year so far?
Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like Connor's on here almost out of a level of respect and, like you said, significance. Cody Garbrandt, not the highest level of competition, but certainly making a statement for himself, re-announcing himself as possibly a player in the division going forward. And to me, probably the cleanest knockout that I've seen all year, where you just caught him right on the chin, neck snap and all. To me, it was violent but clean at the same time, and you don't always get that. I really think from a power perspective, obviously it's Francis Ngannou going against another high-level striker. Like you said, sending the shockwaves of silence over that arena. To me, it's really tough to go with Garbrandt or Ngannou. I honestly can't pick one of the two, so I'm going to lean on you on this one for giving the award.
I think first off, honorable mention to Sean O'Malley. The swag on that knockout was crazy, but I feel like when I'm looking at these knockouts, I got to have like an emoji for each of these. For the Conor one, I got to have like the little cheerleading one because it wasn't like a big shock and awe knockout, but it was definitely like, yay, Conor's back kind of thing.
I think that's actually exactly what you said at the bar. Yay, Conor's back!
I was this one right here. And you know exactly the one I'm talking about. For Ngannou Rozenstruik, that was more scary than anything. That one's kind of like this face emoji. If you're looking for the Rafael Assunção Garbrandt one, it's the X's on the eyes emoji. And if you're asking me which,
I thought it was more like the Joe Rogan. Whoa!
I think so. We got to put that out as a tweet on what's your reaction to the Garbrandt in one emoji. But yeah, man, if you're asking me the one that sent me running around in circles, the moment I saw it, it was the Cody Garbrandt Rafael Assunção one. That one, it was at the buzzer, which adds another effect. It was a walk-off KO. The man face planted, and it really just came out of nowhere. We thought we were going to see a technical picking him apart, and we thought we were going to see it in the third round. I was getting ready to pick up another plate of food as the third round came around, and it was over. He just knocked him out at the buzzer. It really couldn't get any better. I can't imagine seeing a better knockout this year. We'll see. Yeah. But Cody Garbrandt,
like I said, violent but clean. I mean, that's all you can ask for.
I completely agree with you. Look at that man. Poor guy. Thank God we had no nonsense Keith Peterson in there after a couple whiskeys and a couple I wonder if Dominic Cruz approves of that knockout.
Well, I mean, it can't, at least like he said, you can't leave it in the hands of the judges or the ref. And I think Dominic Cruz would definitely approve of the fact that it was knocked out cold, and there was no debating that decision. So,
yeah. All right, final category. Before we get into it, guys, don't forget to like, subscribe, tell us what you think down below. And before shameless plugs. And before we hop into Fighter of the Year, JL, what are your thoughts, and what should we expect going into the second half of this year? Where do you stand, and what are you most excited for the second half of this year?
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm normally a pretty optimistic guy, but I can't help but feel a little pessimistic about the second half of the year. Do I, especially with what came with Izzy talking about getting paid now, we might, legitimately experience some type of fighter holdout here, at least at the very high level. Every single sport has, has had a strike at some point in their history. And I feel like this could be a situation where it's not obviously not going to ever be because these guys are individually contracted. There's no collective bargaining agency. We're never going to see that level. But honestly, I feel pessimistic about getting our superstars in the octagon going forward, especially after the DC and Miocic rematch. So
Yeah,
I think once that fight is over, I'm concerned about what the lineup's going to look like for the rest of 2020.
I think I'm with you, man. I think I mean, for some of that, I think this ultimately might end up better for the fighters after all, as the top people in the sport, the Jorge Masvidals, the Conor McGregors, the Izzies. Those are the ones that are speaking out, and that's what they needed last time. This came up about a couple years ago with their union talks, but this seems to have a different kind of lifeblood to it. But I will say I am optimistic about the Fight Island era that is about to come our way. The UFC Apex was great. I don't know if Fight Island's going to be better. I hope it's outside, but
no chance. You know how
but
fucking hot it is there?
I'm excited to see what the Fight Island era has for us. Hopefully we can have fans back by the end of the year, but who knows what that's going to happen. I'm going to be optimistic. I think it's a big year. I think that some of these categories we might see a lot of shifting in some of these nominees and these winners come the end of the year. So I'm excited. But with that being said, let's hop into our 2020 Mid-Year Fighter of the Year. And here are the nominees. We got Weili Zhang out of China. Obviously, the most dangerous 115-pounder in the world. She could do it all. Knocking out Andrade in 2019, making her statement, beating Joanna in our Fight of the Year. Then you got Gilbert Burns, who came onto the scene big and announcing himself as a serious presence here at 170, taking Tyron Woodley to the brink, knocking out Damian Maia, going into a title fight next weekend against Kamaru Usman. Gilbert Burns might run away with this come the end of the year, but right now we got also competition with Justin Gaethje. Justin Gaethje beating Tony Ferguson in not really the closest fight in the world, really in somewhat outclassing him in certain aspects, and now setting himself up for one of the biggest fights in lightweight history, and definitely the biggest fight a lightweight can get right now against Khabib coming in September. JL, who is our 2020 Fighter of the Year so far?
Well, I'm going to lead you on a little bit. I feel like all three of these fighters, especially when we talked about some of the bigger names being out and not fighting the rest of 2020, to me, this category feels like it's entirely up for grabs. I could very well see any of these three fighters seizing that throne by the time the end of the year, comes around. I'll be interested and really interested to see, what Weili Zhang's next move is going to be. Is she going to go against Shevchenko? Is she going to make a jump and get a shot at Amanda Nunes? I think if she beats either one of them, obviously I think she wins this hands down at some point this year if she's able to do that, and I think she's got the skill set to do it. Also, mad props to her. The situation when she came out and did that fight, leaving China, I think a couple weeks ahead of time, basically to make sure that she was cleared to fight. It was at the onset of the coronavirus, so props to her. I think as it stands right now, though, I would look at these two, Gilbert Burns and Justin Gaethje, and to me, it's Justin Gaethje for this year so far. I think hands down, in my opinion, the best performance that we've seen from a fighter, and maybe even the most unexpected. Like I said, this could change, especially as the year goes on, and obviously we're going to see Burns have a shot at a belt, and that could be the end all be all. But I do think when Gaethje fights Khabib, it's going to be an opportunity for Gaethje to steal that throne once and for all, and that's what it's going to come down to. But right now, for me, it's Gaethje.
Yeah, I think kind of what you did on your overview of all that is this is probably the most contested category we've had. All three of these guys are neck and neck and neck, and seeing how the second half of this year plays out. If Zhang beats Shevchenko, if Gilbert Burns beats Kamaru, or if Justin Gaethje beats Khabib, if all three of them do it, I don't know who the fighter of the year is. This is one that I kind of couldn't decide which way I was going to lean. I'm going to lean Gilbert Burns simply because of the activity over Justin Gaethje. I think Gilbert Burns with 2 wins is better than 1 significant win against Justin Gaethje. At the same time, I'm not going to die on that hill because beating Tony Ferguson on that streak is extremely impressive. As always, we went to our third party to see who is the fighter of the year, and it is Justin, the highlight Gaethje. So another, again, amazing year for Justin. He's the front runner for our 2020 MMA fighter of the year for 2 guys, 1 Octagon. As always, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Don't forget to like, subscribe, tell us what you think in the chat. We put a lot of time putting these videos together for you. So a like and a subscribe goes a long way, and it keeps us motivated to keep pumping out content for you, even on an off week. So again, guys, thank you so much. ISO Lando, take us out. Here is his song, Problem Child, on Look Mom, Your Son's a Rapper.
You've been staring at the clock, hoping time will tell. I've been thinking about the shots, hoping I won't fail. Better deal for your soul, thinking I won't sell. Asking if I get some money.